Hello there everybody and welcome back to Movie Squirm. Today I'm going to be reviewing 2007 film 28 Weeks Later, and this is directed by Juan Carlos Fresnadillo and stars Robert Carlyle, Idris Elba, Rose Byrne and Jeremy Renner. 28 weeks after the original outbreak, Britain has been declared free of infection. However, when a woman with no symptoms is found to be a carrier of the virus, it risks yet another outbreak. Now, I really enjoyed my rewatch of 28 Days Later. It had been a while since I'd seen that film, but it was just so nice to revisit it and enjoy it once more. And if you want to check my review out for that, guys, that'll be in the link down below. And I'll also be doing 28 Years Later, of course, in the coming week. But we are at the sequel 28 Weeks Later here. And seeing this for quite some time. I'd only ever seen it once, and all I can remember about it was the opening scene. So this was like kind of a first time watch for me, and I was quite excited to get into it after really enjoying 28 Days Later on that rewatch, and I was in the mood for this. But it's no wonder I remember that opening. It's pretty damn awesome. It's got like a Night of the Living Dead feel there, with these characters just holed up in the countryside in this cottage, hiding away from the infected and, you know, boarding the whole place up so no one can get in, basically. And of course they do later on and start ripping the house apart. But we see what type of character Robert Carlyle is here straight away, because he leaves his wife in that damn house, shuts the door on her and runs for the hills with no remorse whatsoever. He doesn't care. He just wants to save himself. I've heard a lot of people say, what would you do in that situation? And I can't quite believe that's actually a question, because there's no way I could leave my wife like that. Never mind slam the door on her, even if these ravaged infected are tearing the place apart. I just wouldn't be able to live with myself. But I can't really agree to saying why I could resonate with the character either, because later on in the film we do find out what type of character he is anyway, when he's lying to his kids and stuff about how he tried to save his wife. So yeah, Robert Carlyle is a pretty shitty person in this, in my opinion. So that's my take on what would I do in that opening scene. There's no effort whatsoever for him to try and help her or anything. But despite that, it's still an awesome scene, seeing Robert Carlyle running through the countryside and he's infected just coming from left, right and centre. And he jumps on this boat. You think he's got to salvation, and the zombies are even enter the water there. So yeah, he gets away, but it's just a really good way to open this movie. Now, one thing I like that this movie does is something I don't really see in zombie virus type movies. I'm not going to get into this if it's a zombie or virus infection movie. If I say zombie, I'm really sorry. I explained it in my 28 Days Later review. But I never actually see the world heal and the infection be free and there is no more, you know, virus or anything like that. And this movie actually does it. Now, we do learn that it was only mainland Britain that was infected, but 28 weeks later, we are now free of infection, and we're seeing how humanity is trying to sort of rebuild and, you know, get itself back together again after the devastating effects, the devastating loss of humanity in the British Isles here. I just thought that was a really interesting take to do in a zombie movie, because usually the world is just flattened and doomed, but here it looks like it's going to be healing again. Which, yeah, I don't quite recall seeing that in any of these type of movies before. This movie's got a really solid cast as well. You know, I did read the cast out at the start of the movie, but some of them were in a very early heyday here, before Avengers fame, like Jeremy Renner, Hawkeye himself, or Insidious fame with Rose Byrne and stuff. So it's nice to just see them all sort of start in this movie. If they came out now with a movie with these, you know, big top billed actors in there, I mean, I think a lot of people would be chomping at the bit to see it. So pretty solid acting performances all around there. And the movie has a pretty awesome score here. I mean, it's kind of like the same tune over and over, but somehow builds dread at the same time, which is just quite genius in my opinion. And I really think it works so well when these infected / zombies, infected, let's go with that, are attacking. And I could have listened to this score throughout the entire runtime, to be honest. I mean, it just kind of really works with what's going on screen. And honestly, guys, I've only got one more positive here, because I do have quite a few negatives with this film, and I can probably get into more of the story and stuff when I talk about them. But I did like the very last scene. I believe this may have just been tacked on when I was looking up facts and stuff about this movie, and they weren't really going to go with that. But the outbreak does go full circle, and we see these infected running towards the Eiffel Tower. And that to me says it's gone at least to Europe, if not worldwide. So why we had to wait 23 years for another sequel, it's kind of baffling, but at least it's finally here now. But it was left on a great cliffhanger there. However, guys, I was not really a big fan of 28 Weeks Later, despite a few of them positives there. I mean, one of the big reasons is the story. There is none, really. It's like, oh, the infection's gone, everyone's back to normality. Oh no, it's back. You know, it just goes into a circle there. It's back to square one where we started. And I just don't really see the point of that. It's cool to see the world healing and stuff. I know that was one of my positives, but there's no point to it. It's just doing the same thing over and over again. So, yeah, the story here didn't work for me at all. Now, a lot of this is down to the incompetence of the army that are patrolling the streets of London here. I mean, they're there to make sure this virus doesn't have another outbreak. And these kids who want to go and visit their old house seem to just ease past the security there and break out of this little compound and just go into these villages and stuff where they find their mother, who is actually carrying the virus. So how dangerous is that? She's not showing any symptoms. She's just a carrier of the virus. So they bring her back to this compound, and you think she will be guarded with everyone's life there because she is the main way of getting this virus out. And I know that in the middle of sort of discussing that she could actually have another potential outbreak when Robert Carlyle goes in the room to visit her, but he's just unguarded. You know, there's no one in the room. I don't think he should be allowed to go near it or let alone touch it. And what does he do? He kisses his wife and the saliva gets into him. Bang, there's the outbreak. And I just think their one job is to make sure no virus happens again. And there's just two bad character. I wouldn't say character decisions because it's a collective of people making bad character decisions. So it's just a silly, lazy way of writing this virus to come back, because I just couldn't get on board with that whatsoever, that the army would allow these two things to happen with such stupidity. Also, there's no real characters or protagonists to get behind in this film. It's kind of a mishmash of taking turns with characters to have their moments and their scenes. Like 1 minute we're following Robert Carlyle in the opening scene, then we're following his two kids, then we're following Rose Byrne's character, then we're following Jerry Renner's character, and no one really takes the bull by the horns and takes charge of this movie. Now, I'm not saying that can't work. Pulp Fiction, one of the greatest films ever made, has different protagonists leading us into the stories, these three different stories that's going on in that movie. And yes, no one is really the main star. It's a collective of main stars. And that really works. But here, it just doesn't. These characters just feel hollow. They've got no personality. Well acted. Like I said in my positive, they're well acted. They are great actors here. But there was just no one to get behind. There was no reason to get behind them. Once we get a little bit of screen time with them, we'll jump into the next person. And there was just nothing there. I mean, I didn't warm to anyone in this movie at any point whatsoever. On the other hand, they tried to make this ultimate infected villain in Robert Carlyle's character. We don't like him anyway. He's a sleazeball before he even turned into the infected. So is that trying to make him even worse than an infected person because he was already a bad person to begin with? I don't know. That seemed to be what they were trying to do. And he's attacking his kids and everything. But for some reason, it just doesn't work. I think I just prefer the more hordes of infected attacking people, like in 28 Days Later, which was way better. You know, that just worked. So why would you change it up? I don't know. But he takes a lot of the focus. Now, there are other infected characters in this movie, but they seem to just focus on him the most. And there's one point which, again, just suspended my disbelief. A lot of our characters are trying to get away from these infected. and Robert Carlyle's there in point A. They get so far to point B, and he just turns up out of nowhere, round the corner, and comes after his kids again. And I was just like, really? What are the odds here? So yeah, I don't think that paid off at all, really. However, my biggest negative with 28 Weeks Later is a mixture of the directing and the editing. My God, this was Paul Greengrass on fucking acid, especially when we have these attack scenes with the infected. Oh my God, he's got close-up shots, the camera's shaking everywhere, there are editing cuts like fucking Alfred Hitchcock in Psycho in the shower scene, just every second. It's just, I was like, what the hell is going on here? This is just so hard to watch. It was so frustrating to the point where it started angering me, and it became unwatchable in these scenes at times. I don't know why they went with that decision. I did not. Well, actually, I do. He's trying to make it seem more hectic, but why he looked at that and thought, "Oh yeah, that's awesome," I don't know, because it was such a damn eyesore. Unfortunately, guys, this was a poor sequel in my opinion. I much prefer the first film, and I'm very confident that I will enjoy 28 Years Later a lot more than this tame effort. I'm just going to go ahead and make this movie now. I'm going to give 28 Weeks Later a 4 out of 10. A big fat nothing burger, unfortunately. Okay guys, at the end of these reviews, I always like to leave a little fun fact. Now, a fun fact for 28 Weeks Later is that according to the director, composer John Murphy only had 2 weeks to compose the entire score for this movie. And that's quite, that's quite impressive because the score's awesome. Okay guys, I hope you all enjoyed this review. What did you think of 28 Weeks Later? Don't forget to check out my 28 Days Later review down below. And please do give this video a like and subscribe to this channel if horror is your sort of thing. It would really help me out. Thanks so much guys. You all take care, and I'll see you all in the next video.